Thank you. I knew that little recording in progress it's so intense. Recording in progress. It's like wants everyone to know. Welcome everybody to How to Cross Stitch for absolute beginners. We all need a place to start every once in a while. So I thought that might be a fun subject to cover for anybody who's been wanting to learn to cross stitch, who hasn't quite jumped in yet, or for somebody who knows how to cross stitch, but sometimes it helps to relearn the basics and you learn something new about your own technique as you go. So I'm Lizzie Bean, the founder of Cross Stitch, or of Stitch People, the founder of Cross Stitch. Man, that would be amazing. No, I'm the founder of Stitch People, along with Spencer, my husband, who's here in the background. Hello. He's helping out with chat. So please participate in the chat. We love to hear from you. I'm a chatty person for those of you who haven't met me yet. So when we hear things from you in the chat, whether that's questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions, it's always really fun for me to be able to interact with you. So he's going to keep an eye on that and feed me your questions and your thoughts as we go along. So please don't hesitate to participate there. Also, I just want to say we love to see your works in progress and your finished works. So whether you're a pro, whether you're just starting out, because this is the very first How to Cross Stitch class, we want to see what you're up to. So if you're on social media, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, post a picture so that we can, give you a digital high five and say, yay, you. A little encouragement always helps. The way we'll find your post is if you use the magical hashtag trifecta. So use the hashtag Stitch People, just all one word, Stitch People. Use the hashtag DMC and use the hashtag Make It With Michaels. And between those three hashtags, we will find your project, hopefully in the ether of the internet searches, and be able to see your projects and see how it's going for you, hopefully really, really well. So I've got a little welcome panel here, just letting you know what I'm going to be doing today. So I'm just teaching the basics. We're starting from scratch on how to cross stitch. Hopefully you all got the email that had my little intro video that I recorded for you just about materials, what materials are needed to start cross stitching. I didn't want to waste time in class today going over that. So hopefully it's only, I think, 8 minutes. And we just go over all the tools and materials necessary to start cross stitching just about anything. So go back and watch that if you want, or just jump right in. That's just why I'm going to skip over materials today. So I'm going to jump into teaching the basics. I'm going to be stitching one single egg from the pattern, just like right in the middle of my hoop, keeping it simple, but you are more than welcome to stitch more than one. I'll go over that in a second. The pattern does sort of go over how to do that, but today I'm just going to be stitching one, and I'm going to be using 2 different floss colors so that we can talk about switching colors while you're stitching and how to accommodate for when a pattern has multiple floss colors. So if you want to stitch along with me today, I'm going to be doing 1 egg and 2 colors. You can choose whatever 2 colors you want. And please, now, if you haven't already, cut your fabric to about 5 inches by 5 inches, and we'll get started soon. One note about floss colors. So there was a little mix up on my end. It was totally my fault. So we have this beautiful sample stitch that we put in all our photos and everything. I believe the DMC bundle reflects these color options. In the pattern, I put other color combinations just to spark your creativity. And there's a little confusion that those floss colors don't match. So these floss colors right here on this little panel are the ones reflected in this. If you bought the floss bundle from DMC, I believe it's going to be these colors, should be. And we're going to send an update to those who signed up for the class via email. We'll send you just a 1-page PDF download that has these colors here in case you'd rather, stick to this and know exactly what you're doing. If you want to branch out, you can refer to the pattern. We've just got a couple little extra color palettes there for anyone who wants to think outside the box and put their own spin on it. So just a note about that. Sorry for the confusion. When it comes to colors, ultimately, you can do whatever you want. So I see a little bit going on in the chat. Spencer, do we have any questions yet?
Why don't you actually jump into the chat yourself?
Oh my goodness.
See what's going on.
Okay, see what's going on. Oh, we've got people from everywhere. Roanoke, Texas, St. Louis, Connecticut, Boston. I love it. I love it. Oh, Susan, thanks for noticing. You guys, I got an egg sweater for this class. Specifically, I've never been happier with a purchase. Instagram ads have me pegged. I didn't go looking for it. It was just an Instagram ad that was like, here's the zany fried egg sweater. And I was like, well, that has me written all over it. And I can wear it for my How to Cross Stitch class for Michael's, making egg patterns for springtime. So thank you for the compliment, Susan. It is very soft and cozy, so highly recommend. Thank you all. It is so fun to see where everyone is from. We have some Wendy's from the UK. Thank you everybody for jumping on. I am curious before we get started, indicate in the chat if you have never cross-stitched before. I will also count, maybe you cross-stitched like years and years and years ago. If you're one of the people kind of like me where my mom, my grandma taught me when I was like 8, and then I dropped it for like 20 years and I kind of had to relearn. I'll say that counts. That's a good reason to be in a how to cross stitch class and freshen up those skills. So let us know in the chat, say like me or I'm new or something like that. I'd love to see, oh, Deidre says never ever, Sandra says never before. Okay, so this is really great. I would love for all you newbies to be really, really vocal. Let me know if you have questions. Feel free to like all caps, like stop the bus. I have a question. I definitely want to make sure that your thoughts are being heard. Karen says, can you show how big the cloth should be? Yes, absolutely. So, oh, West Covina. Awesome, awesome. All right. So it looks like a lot of people are new and a lot of people are from all over. I just want to say, like, as a side note, my touchy-feely feel-good moment for the day is, what with all the craziness in the world, I think it is so cool, these online classes that we get to do together where we've got this one really great, creative, happy medium that unites us all from literally all over the world. I think that's just really fun to think about. Somebody sitting in a chair in Georgia, somebody sitting in a chair in Connecticut, somebody sitting in a chair in the UK, and here I am in Salt Lake City, and we're all connected, and that's really special. So truly thank you for being here. I'm going to switch to my stitching view. You can see me down here. I'll flail my arms. I'm down here in the corner if you need expressions from my hyper expressive face. But today, this is what we're going to be doing. So this is our beautiful sample. Jen on the Stitch People team stitched this for us so that we could photograph it. And the reason I have it out is A, because it's pretty, want to show you what we're up to, and B, it's going to help me explain a little bit about fabric size, which I think it was Karen who asked about that. So I'm just going to scooch some of my supplies off of the side here and go over the pattern very briefly before we get into actually stitching technique. So in relation to the video that we posted about supplies and about materials, all your material needs are right here. So basically we need a hunk of fabric. Aida fabric has the square grid, helps us cross stitch. Love it. We need embroidery floss, and we've got those color recommendations down here, or the DMC floss bundle / list that we will email to you all.
It's also a link to that is in the chat.
Oh, Spencer put a link to that PDF if you want the floss colors that are used in the sample. So that's in the chat. Thank you, Spencer. So every cross stitch project is going to be using floss of some kind. I've always used DMC floss. I think it's the easiest to use. It's smooth, it's silky, it's beautiful. I've been a fan of DMC before we were even like doing classes, with Michaels and DMC. So it's a pure just fan thing. I really like their floss. They've been around forever. Great stuff. And no matter what brand you use, cross stitching is going to need fabric. It's going to need floss. It's also going to need a needle. And I'm going to be using a magnetic needle minder today to keep track of that. You need scissors or clippers of some kind. You need a hoop or a frame, and you need a pencil. So we're all good on the supplies, and hopefully you've picked out some colors. I'm going to be using a light and a dark purple. And I'm going to be stitching this egg in the lower left corner so we can talk about color switching, but you can feel free to choose whichever egg you want. The theory will kind of be the same if you want to just do a solid egg, because that's easier to wrap your head around, or just, a color block one. That's great. I think this egg in the pattern is the most complicated, which is why I'm choosing to do that one today so that we can talk about how to count this out, how to do these one-off little stitches, and how to switch colors. So for today's purposes, pick 2 colors. Anything will do. And then here is your pattern. Now, Stitch People, the origination of Stitch People is Cross Stitch Family Portraits. This is our primary book. That's me and Spencer there on the cover. We do Cross Stitch Family Portraits, and since every family is unique, every pattern is unique. And since every pattern is unique, all the color combinations are unique. So with Stitch People, we don't often assign color values in the traditional sense. Many traditional cross stitch patterns will have different symbols on top of colors in a pattern grid. Like this one might be all circles, and this one might be all slashes. And then there'd be some kind of key or legend that shows you, the slash symbol is DMC whatever color, and the circle symbol is DMC whatever color. So if you ever see a cross stitch pattern that's covered in a lot of little black symbols, those black symbols indicate the floss colors that you should use. Again, at Stitch People, we love for you to exercise your own creativity and choose what colors do you like? What colors are going to mix with your decor? Or if you're, building your own family portrait, what colors, do the people in your family have for their clothes or their hair or their, whatever elements you're putting in your portraits, getting creative and getting crafty. So that's one little unique thing about how our patterns are formatted, that if you're brand new to cross stitch, you might be a little bit shocked to see other patterns that are covered in all these black symbols. You'll also notice many patterns will have light and dark grid lines. Usually, and you're going to want to double check, there's a reason it's called counted cross stitch. There's going to be a lot of counting happening, but as you're looking at any cross stitch pattern, keep an eye out for the more bold lines and the lighter lines. Bold lines usually indicate sections of 10. So I'm just going to double check. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Indeed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's something that I like to do when I'm working with a new cross stitch pattern, just to make sure that my brain is registering these bold lines correctly. That's just to help you count a little more quickly. If you're trying to go, from this egg to over here, well, that's easy. It's, 10, 20, 30, and you can figure it out. That's just something to be aware of. You also want to make sure to read every pattern that you see, not only from, down here, this just a little instruction, maybe cut your fabric, or down here, egg dimensions. Hey, look, we've already counted it for you. So every single egg is 8 squares wide. So again, I'll double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, huzzah, and 11 squares high. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's great. So now when you're planning how much fabric to cut, this is like my long and winding road explanation to that original question. When you're planning how much fabric you need to cut, you need to be aware of 2 things: the dimensions of your pattern, as well as the size of your fabric. So Aida fabric comes in a number of sizes. And I happen to have 2 examples right here. So for visibility purposes and photography purposes, sometimes we'll stitch on size 11 fabric because size 11 fabric is bigger than size 14 fabric. I'm going to zoom in here so that you can really see the difference. The number of Aida that you see, size 14 or size 11, that number refers to the number of squares per inch in your fabric. So as you can see, if I hold up a measuring tape to this, you can see that there's approximately 11 squares in an inch of this bigger size and 14 squares in an inch of this smaller size. Size 14 fabric is a little bit more common overall. It comes, and all Aida really comes in a lot of colors, but I tend to see the most of size 14 at craft stores or online. Size 14, it's a go-to size. There's also a size 28, which is like twice as small, but often people will stitch the same size stitches on a size 28. So that looks a little bit more like linen in the background because it's less obviously, a holy grid of fabric. But this is really up to personal preference. For beginners, you might find working with size 11 to be a little easier. But if you're following the same principles, size 14 it won't be a problem either. It's just kind of up to personal preference. And one thing to think about based on the size of fabric you're using is the number of threads of floss you're using. So we'll talk about that in just a second. This hoop, I believe, is a 10-incher. I might as well pull this out and double check. Oh, nope, it's an 8-incher. I'm bad at gauging. Apparently my sense of direction or distance is not great. Yeah, this is an 8-inch hoop. But today with my single egg, I'm going to be working with a 6-inch hoop on the size 14 fabric. So back to the pattern overview. One thing that we did that's a little unique is because we have this big egg sampler, you could stitch it all like we did every single egg. It's really colorful. It's really fun. It's just like a nice modern kind of colorful, eggy, cute, springy pattern. If you want to do just one egg like we're going to do in class today, I went through and outlined for both size 14 and size 11 fabric what the pattern dimensions of an individual egg would be, a 3 eggs would be, a 6 eggs would be, all of that. I outlined kind of what the pattern limits would be, dimensions. I then translated that by the size of the fabric into the literal, measurements by ruler, and then approximated how much fabric I would recommend you cut based on the above information. So for me, a single egg, we already determined because it's on here, 8 squares by 11 squares. And if we're only stitching one, that's our dimensions, 8 wide by 11 high. If we do 8 squares divided by size 14 fabric, that gives us 0.6 inches and likewise 0.8 for the 11 height. And you generally want to add 2 inches of fabric on all sides for your pattern as you're working. That gives you plenty of slack to get it in a hoop, plenty of slack if there's any fraying on the edges that it's not going to interrupt your pattern. So if we have basically a 1 inch by 1 inch pattern motif, to add 2 inches on all sides gives us a 5 inch by 5 inch piece of fabric. I won't go into explaining all of these, but it all follows the same kind of math. I hopefully just saved people time by laying this out for you. That was my hope. I hope that was good. I hope you enjoy it. We're going to do number 1, just one big egg in the middle. I can feel my throat getting dry, so forgive me while I take a water sip. Spencer, do we have any questions you can tell me in the meantime?
Yeah, so someone asked, could you put this pattern on a t-shirt?
Oh, heck yes.
And for that, you'll look for waste canvas or soluble canvas.
Yeah. Did you just come up with that? Are you answering this question your very self?
Indeed, I am.
I'm so pleased. Spencer knew the answer and he told us. Yes, waste canvas or water soluble canvas.
I will toot my horn for a second.
There's the-
Yesterday, Lizzie, she was making a video and she was like, when it comes to tapestry needles versus crewel needles, like
I
which
always
one
get
is
them
sharp? And I
confused.
was like, tapestry is the blunt, crewel is the sharp. And she was like, how do you know that? And I was like, because we've been doing cross stitch for 10 years.
Yep. He's picked it up, folks. So that's pretty cool.
I may not stitch myself,
Yeah.
but I do know a lot about it.
So yes, this would be really, really cute. Like you can get sweatshirts. I think I know some craft stores carry like plain t-shirts and plain sweatshirts. And what you can do is I would still use a little embroidery hoop, but if you kind of sketch out your pattern on a water soluble canvas, and then you put that on the shirt in a little frame, you stitch over it and then rinse it off, the paper comes out and the stitching stays on. It would be such a cute little springy thing. Let your creativity run wild. You could make this into a wall hanging, into something you put on a frame, into a pillow, into one of those little cute little pillowy things with a little ribbon around it that you hang on like a door handle to your bedroom or something like that. I don't know. You could do whatever you want. I encourage you to, and I encourage you to post a picture about it when you're done so we can all see. Now we are going to start stitching, folks, now that we're a solid 20 minutes in. To get going with stitching, it is always good to orient yourself to your pattern and your fabric. The grid of your pattern directly correlates to the grid of your fabric. It is the same. And now this is where the counted part of counted cross stitch goes. Again, I'm going to be doing this purple egg with all these little randoms. I've got 8 squares by 11 squares. So what I'm going to do is put my egg smack dab in the middle of my fabric. So how do we find the center point? We fold it hamburger and hot dog style, except it's a square. So it's just 2 hamburgers. And I'm using just a plain mechanical pencil. I'm a big believer in, I'm the kind of person, not everybody's like this, but maybe you will relate, some of you out there. I'm the kind of person who will let things get in the way of my starting something. I'll be like, well, I can't go skiing because my snow pants are old. So I should wait till I get new snow pants. Darn, I can't do that hard thing that's just kind of scary to me. I love skiing. It's just been a minute. But so in this case, technically like a heat soluble pen, a water soluble pencil is the safest way to go about marking your fabric of like your piece. But don't let that stop you. If you have a mechanical pencil, I've never had problems with mechanical pencil ruining anything. If you draw lightly and just give yourself some guides here on your fabric, it's going to be just fine. Don't use a Sharpie. I mean, let's be smart about it. Let's not use a permanent pen, but a little, you know, graphite pencil, no big deal. So I folded this in half and I'm just going to make, you know, roughly in my center area, I'm just going to make a little mark on that line that I folded. And I'm going to do the same thing the other direction. Aida fabric is identical on front and back generally. When you get into using fabrics that have some glitter weaved in or some, you know, natural kinds of bits weaved in, you might want to just scan it with your eyes and see if you have a preference on the front or back, because there might just be more glitter on one side or the other. But as far as plain fabric goes, there's no right or wrong way to use the fabric. It's the same front and back. So now I've got my center point and I get easily distracted. That's just who I am. So I generally like to take a minute whether I'm doing, a stitch people portrait or a counted cross stitch pattern or somewhere in between, which is kind of what this is, where we're using this pattern to do it our own way. I know that my egg is 8 by 11. That's a really simple counting to do. So I'm just going to save my brain and save my own distractibleness. 8 squares wide is 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left and right of the center point. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left and right center point. And then 11 squares, it's going to be a 5 above or below and 6 above or below. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 above, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below. And I'm just going to bring out these lines and give myself a little bit of a guideline so that if I get distracted, I'll find my place yet again. So I've just really lightly marked my center point and the outer bounds of my pattern. If you were doing, a 3 eggs in a row and you have, oops, we zoomed in. I did not realize we zoomed in. When you do, if you're doing 3 eggs in a row and up here, I've assumed 2 squares of space between all eggs, you'd have a 28 squares wide pattern by 11 high, because it's still just the 11 high, 3 eggs in a row. So then, we'd take 28 squares wide, that's going to be 14 on either side, and we'd have kind of a wider situation. So I just like to wrap my head around what I'm doing a little bit. Now for the embroidery hoop. There are lots of different options you can use. I tend to use traditional embroidery hoops made of bamboo or wood, and Q snaps. I just bit my tongue when I said that. Q snaps. They're PVC frames that are a little bit thicker, just a little bit easier to handle. But for today's class, I'm using just a smaller hoop because it's a smaller frame. And what you do with the hoop is you take the inner hoop that doesn't have the latchy on it, and you lay your work across it, and you can take the outer hoop and press it over like this. Now, I like to get ahead of it since I have a square piece of fabric. I know I found my center point. I'm going to just make a little effort to get this a little more centered so that maybe this will be its like final frame as well. And I can just like, boop, hang it right on the wall. Another thing I like to do, this is just a Lizzie life hack. So for new stitchers, what I've done here is the traditional quote unquote correct way to use an embroidery hoop. Where, oh no, it isn't. I did it the Lizzie way because the back side is the side that has the markings on it. And usually the back side is on the back and the front side is like this. The front side is raised and the back side is depressed in the hoop. The reason I don't like to use it this way, and I subconsciously did it my way when I first showed you, is because if, again, you're like me and you're a little distractible, if I stand up to go fill up my water bottle right now and I pet my dogs and I maybe grab a snack, nom, 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 and I come back to stitching and I forget to like wash my hands in between, I might have some like dog fur on my hands, or if they rolled in the dirt outside, I might have a little dust on my fingers. I might have some cookie crumbs on my fingers. And if I start stitching and this is the front and my thumbs are like this on my fabric, I find that sometimes even just the natural oils of our skin, it's dry in Utah, I use lotion. So just the natural oils that happen can sometimes discolor the fabric. And if my front side of my fabric where my work is going to be displayed is the part that's raised the most, my fingers are going to get on that as I'm holding it. So what I like to do, again, this is kind of the traditional way, backside depressed, front side raised. I like to do it the other way, which is the first way I did it. I like to raise the backside because then what I just described, cookie fingers, dusty dog fingers, that's going to be on the back of my fabric. And I won't have to worry about washing it or gunking it up. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, what if I don't prevent that? Lizzie, what if I do get Cheeto dust all over my Aida fabric? First of all, that's a real shame. I hope you never get Cheeto dust because I've never encountered that, but that is my worst nightmare. If, however, it's just natural kind of discoloration, maybe a pencil marking is a little too dark, maybe it, just natural wear and tear of your life gets on your fabric. Generally speaking, you're going to want to, if you have any scrap fabric, test any sort of washing material that you're going to use on a piece of scrap, make sure it doesn't discolor anything. But generally dabbing at a stain or a discoloration with a clean, wet rag that has a little bit of like dish soap on it, like a Dawn dish soap, that helps kind of get rid of some of those oils, some of that discoloration, and then use another cloth that has just water to kind of rinse it. And you can iron, lightly steam your piece, hold an iron above it, let that steam kind of flatten that all out and it'll dry. And generally we've had success with that. So just gentle patience. Don't freak out if you get a stain or something like that. Remember, It's just cross stitch. There's no such thing as a cross stitch emergency. There really isn't. Even when the gift that you've been planning goes awry or your dog chews something up. I mean, it's heartbreaking for sure. It can be, but in the long scheme of things, this is a hobby. This is a fun thing. Remember, it's fun. We're having fun here. So now we get to
Patty
start
asks,
stitching.
but doesn't the back finished project look different than the front?
Yep, you're absolutely right. When I am done with this, I've centered it just for my own neuroses, but when we're finished, I'll probably flip the fabric again to like frame it in the embroidery hoop. So that's a really good question. If you do it the traditional way, it's nice and clean, no problems, which is likely going to be the case for such a small and quick motif such as the one we're doing. It'll be way easier to just like finish and hang up. But yeah, I just want to give you my little Lizzie pro tip. But yeah, Patty, you're absolutely right. We'll flip the fabric over when we're done. So I'm just going to throw my little magnetic needle minder on here to hold my needle, and I'm going to start with floss. Now, generally, how I like to stitch is, and this is just a little bit up to personal preference here. I'm just walking you through my way. When I'm doing a pattern, I like to look at the pattern and the colors. I like to generally start with what I think of as like broad strokes. What's the most color? And in this particular purple pattern, it's the light purple that has the most color. So I'm going to start with that because I think that sort of lays the foundation for anything that has less color to kind of come on top, if you will. That's how it translates in my brain. And it's sort of like adding details, adding little sprinkles. I like to just lay the foundation of the biggest swaths of color first. So I'm going to start with the light purple.
Can I zoom in?
Yeah.
We need better quality.
Sure. Let me get this out of the way. We'll clean up and I'll center myself, get all zen about it here. We'll put the pattern up here in this corner so everybody can see it. And then I'll stitch here. I think that'll work great. So I'm going to start with my light purple. And when you're working with embroidery floss, how much do you cut? You may be wondering. My general trick of the trade is to hold the floss in your pointer fingers and thumb. And I generally, you can see, there we go, kind of out to my elbow, like somewhere between my elbow joint and my shoulder joint, kind of my bicep area. So just reach up and squeeze those biceps, and that's going to be a good length. If you have too much floss at once, it has a tendency to loop, to create knots. So you might think, oh, I'll just use a big long length of floss. That'll make it super easy. But the fact is, it might be a little bit more prone to twisting and knotting. So resist the urge, and we'll go over how to, start and stop, and so that you can avoid all of that. Now I'm using size 14 fabric, and I mentioned we'd circle back to the threads of floss that you need. Embroidery floss is the word I'm looking for. Embroidery floss comes in a loose twist of 6 strands. And if you watch the video before class, I mentioned this there too. It is rare that you use all 6 strands of floss at once. With size 14 Aida, I generally like to use 3 threads at once. So I'll just split these 6 strands in half, 2 groups of 3, and pull slowly. If you get a little bit bunched, think of pulling into a Y shape where you're kind of pulling out the top 2, and you sometimes I'll even tuck like this tail end in my mouth and pull like this if it's kind of knotting up, but just go slow. It might twist around itself, but it's probably not going to knot. So just be careful. And then I like to just sort of run the flosses that I'm going to use like this through my fingers. This helps flatten them out, helps the threads lay side by side a little bit better. If you're using size 11 fabric, I would use 4 strands of floss, and that's just personal preference. So now I'm going to thread the needle. I generally just lick the ends of my floss. This is probably a bad habit. All real traditional embroiderers are probably rolling their eyes at me. There are waxes like beeswaxes and thread waxes that you can use for this very same purpose, that are apparently better for the threads, more of a conditioner, and they don't, I've heard that licking the ends can help like rust out the inside of the eye of the needle. I've never had a problem with it, and needles are really inexpensive. So if I need to replace them, I will. With cross stitch, there's a few ways you can begin. I'm just going to teach you my way that I have found to be tried and true. What this means is when you thread these 3 threads of floss through your needle, don't do like with sewing where you might pull the ends together and tie a knot at the end. Leave a tail. I'm going to leave, what is this, about 2 inches. And I like to hold my needle when I'm stitching at the base, right where that floss is, to kind of hold that in place. So you see I have a little bit of a tail here, and I'm just holding at the base, and then I don't have any knots. You want to avoid knots generally. It's not that you can never use them. Again, just like with the mechanical pencil thing that I was talking about, like if you need to make a knot and that makes you feel like your life is easier and you have more control or something, make a knot. The cross stitch police does not exist. They will not come arrest you. But as far as best practices go, I'm going to teach you how to not use knots. So again, this is the back side of the fabric. And what I'm going to do, this is now why we get into the territory of counted cross stitch. I'm going to start at the bottom. But if I think of, you know, my 8 squares wide by 11 squares high pattern here, this is essentially the rectangle that I've made. So starting at the bottom right, I'm going to be inclined to want to start down here, but there's no stitch here. So this is where I have to start counting. I also have to think about the fact that the backside, looking at the backside is going to be a mirror of looking at the front side. So if I want to start on the bottom right, I actually have to think about what that'll look like on the front, and bottom right will be actually this corner here. Does that make sense? So like bottom right of where my egg will be, whoop, is actually bottom left on my back side. So just keep that in mind. Pick up my pencil here. And here I am in the, let's see, bottom left of the back side so that it translates to bottom right of the front side. Right now, I have my needle poking through this exact corner that I've circled here. My first stitch, if I count over one hole on the Aida fabric and another hole on the Aida fabric, that's the true bottom right corner of what will be my first stitch. And take a deep breath, everybody. You're about to make your first cross stitch for a lot of you. So again, my needle's currently here. I need to go over one hole, 2 holes, and go. All right. So I'm going to go over one hole, go over 2 holes. Now we're at the true bottom right, and I'm going to pull my needle through from the back to the front. Don't go too fast though, because you want to leave a tail on the back and hold that. It can be as long as you want for now. We're just getting started. You want to hold that tail with your finger. Is this floss too hard to see? Is that the problem?
Yeah,
Okay, we're just going to do a quick, we're going to swap the colors here because I want y'all to be able to see. So let me just, I keep checking my screen, realizing this beautiful lavender is just really blending into the white there. So let me just switch over to dark purple really quick. I'll catch up. Spence, do we have any questions in the meantime?
No, just there's some chatter about the quality of the video, and thank you so much for the feedback. We'll definitely look at that for future classes.
Oh, is it grainy? I think that's a Zoom thing, unfortunately.
Yeah. But we'll zoom in and
Yeah, hopefully that'll
hopefully
help.
that'll be a little better. Maria asks if you've tried using more than 3 threads.
On size 14?
You could answer.
Just was that the just in generally? Yeah, I some people like the thicker look of 4 threads on size 14 fabric. It's really up to personal preference. So that's something I invite you to experiment with. So now you can see purple against white. Hopefully that's a little better. We're going to go again. So bottom left on the back is the true bottom right on the front, but we don't want that. We're going to go over 1 hole, 2 holes. There we go. We've caught up to ourselves. 1 hole, 2 holes. All right. So now you pull your needle from back to front. And I went too fast, the very thing that I told you all not to do. And I realized my threads are not the same length there. So I just clip in that to make that work. All right. So you want to leave a tail on the back side. I'm going to make mine a little bit long just so I can comfortably hold it down with the index finger of my left hand as I continue to stitch. I also encourage you, especially for you newbies, it's going to be so annoying and so challenging, but try not to flip, 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 flip as you go. Try to keep your focus on the front. When you're getting started, like we are right now, there's going to be a little more flipping, but especially once we get into the stitching of it, just be careful. Just be careful with that. So now I just want to remind you where we're at on our pattern. We brought up our needle on this bottom right. We're going to create our first diagonal because, as you can probably see, as you've observed, a cross stitch is really just filling in each of these squares with an X shape. So coming from this bottom right corner, we're just going to go to the top left of this square and make our first stitch as a single straight stitch as a diagonal. There we go. And I'm holding on the back there so that floss is not pulling through. And now I'm going to go top right of that little square, but don't pull too fast because this is why we don't need a knot. As you pull to complete the cross stitch, a loop will form on the back, just in the natural course of stitching. And what you can do is play with this loop to get that tail a little bit shortened. Just take your time and loop that tail or loop the loop around the tail, loop the loop. And when you pull that tight, that tail's not going nowhere, and you didn't even need a knot about it. So it's not going to get all chunky on the back. And then you complete the second diagonal, easy breezy. Ta-dum, that's our first cross stitch, folks. How exciting is that? Now, once again, the reason I chose the specific egg pattern that I did is because it's the countiest of all the counted cross stitch patterns here, because immediately we see that we have a speckle. And now I've inverted my colors, but we're going to skip a stitch. So we're going to move to the left, but skip a stitch because that's got to be a darker purple. And then we've just got 2 more stitches to go. So, and as you can see in the grid, hopefully it has started to dawn on you that cross stitches share holes in the Aida fabric. So I'm going to skip just 1 square over, and I'm going to complete my second cross stitch on the bottom row here. Just 2 diagonals. And another lesson that's going to be very valuable for you to learn early on, especially for you newbies, is to make sure that all your under diagonals go the same direction and all of your over diagonals go the same direction. Now I have 2 stitches to do, so I'm just going to complete that second one right next to it, because again, on the pattern, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 across the bottom that go 2 light, a dark, and a light. So I'm finishing the 2 dark, or the 2 and the 1. I've inverted my colors, so it's a little tricky.
Maria asks, do you have any tips on knots?
Okay, yes, I probably will develop a knot while I'm stitching. It happens to everyone all the time. So you did nothing wrong if you have developed a knot in your floss. If it frustrates you to know, like just the full extent, cut it off, rethread, start over. Just cut your losses, move on, get a fresh start. If you have the patience, usually what's happened is it will just, it looks like a knot, it feels like a knot, but it's just like a loop that's kind of looped around itself. So if you just sort of work the sides of it and kind of stick your needle through the loop and kind of pull, often you'll be able to kind of like break it free. So just like if you're untangling a necklace, just deep breaths. You've done nothing wrong. That's life, right? You think life's going along nice and smooth, stitchy, stitchy, and then wham, a big knot. So just breathe and move right along. So now I'm going to just move up 1 square and do 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches right above the row that I just did. And I'm going to zoom in even a little more and try and be very careful with where I move this hoop, because I want you to be able to see a tip that I have for you. So as we go up, like I mentioned, you want all of your under diagonals to go the same direction. In this case, my under diagonals are the top left corner of each stitch to the bottom right. My over diagonals are the bottom left to the top right. So I'm going to continue that throughout my whole pattern, and that's going to make it look really consistent and give it kind of that like pro level feel of an advanced stitcher. A couple other things to consider are thusly, as you continue stitching and more stitches share these holes in the Aida fabric, you'll have a maximum of 4 stitches potentially sharing. As you, and I hope I can exemplify this, I hope the video quality is okay. As you share holes with existing stitches, you want to be careful to feed your needle kind of next to the existing floss in the hole that you're aiming for, as opposed to feeding the needle through some of that floss. So I could, I'm going to hold this at a funny angle so that you can see it. I could put my needle in like this, but do you see how it's kind of catching some of that existing floss? It's not necessarily a bad thing. If you find that you've done that, it's not the end of the world. It really is okay. And I can show you kind of how to fix it. But try to, this is one of the reasons I like to use a pointed embroidery needle, even while I'm cross stitching, is you can kind of use the tip of your needle to move things aside. So I can sort of brush this diagonal out and flatten it, make it look nice. I can take the flosses, threads of floss, whatever, that are already in this hole and sort of push them down if I need to, so that I can bring my needle in right above. See, now I can hardly even see. Yeah, okay, I've pushed them out. And I can bring that needle in right above those threads, and I'm not catching anything. And I just get everything to lay really smoothly side by side by side. I'm also going to teach you on this row, what we did for these first 3 stitches was complete each individual cross stitch. You can also complete stitches when you're working, especially with a solid color in an area. You can complete them in rows. So I'll do all the diagonals going one direction and go back the other. Now, somebody asked about knots. I told you I'd get one. I always do. So this is an example of what a knot would look like when you're working on your work. And it feels like the end of the world, especially when you're in a groove and then it just comes to a full halting stop. What it is just a loop. It's just looped around itself. So see how I can catch that loop in my needle, and I just pull on that slightly and then just pull. I'm just really giving it a minute and it pops free. So truly any loops that occur, you don't have any ends. So there's no things actually tying around and knotting. If you think about, where the ends of your floss are, you've got the one end here and the other is secured. So it's only really loops. And there are always ways to undo a loop a little easier than a true knot. So now I've done one diagonal here. I'm going to go across this whole row, 4 stitches, and complete all my under diagonals. And then I'll go back the other direction and do my over diagonals. Just want to check and make sure I didn't get any other knots. You might also be wondering, Lizzie, what's the correct direction for my diagonals? Do I, which way do the unders go and which way do the overs go? I have never found anything that says it matters, just as long as it's consistent to the specific project that you're doing. So once you've decided, stick to it, but it doesn't matter in the beginning which way you go at the end of the day. So I've done those unders and now I'm doing overs. Technically, this is the Danish method of cross stitching, is completing in rows, and doing individual stitches at a time is the English method. A little trivia. So now, again, I've inverted my colors. I'm going to move up a row, and I like to think of where I just landed. So I finished on this far left side. So this is kind of where my needle is. So what I'm going to do is hop over and do this row here. So again, we're going to count. I need to go over 2 and do that row. But this row has a speckle. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 diagonals, skip 1, and then do 1, 2, 3, 4 diagonals. And then I'll go back the other direction. So again, I'm going over 2 from where I ended, because this is where I've ended on the pattern. So now I need to go 1, 2, 1, 2. I promise if you keep the focus of your eyes on the front of your fabric, your hand-eye coordination will catch up. It is so clunky. You might feel like you're like stabbing all over the place, like where do I even go? Eventually, you will gain the control that you need and the coordination that you need to just poke your needle, right where you need it. It does come with time. It's like any skill, if I went and picked up a basketball and tried to dunk it, I would not be successful because I don't have basketball skills. But if I practiced, I might be able to. So again, I'm doing 3 stitches, skipping 1, and then 4 stitches. And then I'll go back the other direction. We've got 15 minutes. Spence, do we have any questions?
What do you suggest if you found out that you stitched the wrong color on a box and you're on your second color of the thread already?
That's a great question. That's honestly a pretty common mistake, is like if you kind of miscount or you add
I think you're getting called out for your under directions going a different way.
Oh, am I? Oh my goodness, I am. Look at you guys. See, you caught me. What's funny is I usually do it the way that I'm doing it now, but I started funky and I don't know why I did. So this is a great thing. I'm teaching this class and I've made a giant mistake and you're all calling me out and I love you for it. Thank you. And this is how I would fix this mistake in real time, is picking it out just like this. And again, this is why I like a pointy needle, because you can use it as a tool. Thank you everyone for catching. This third row, I usually stitch this direction and I don't know why I started. I think it's because I wanted to really start on that bottom right corner for it to make sense, give ourselves an anchor. And then I threw myself off here. Just 10 years of stitching one way, and then in class I do it a different way. Why? I don't know, because I'm on the spot. It's like teachers. I've often heard teachers who have to like stand at a chalkboard or a whiteboard and like write things that like spelling goes out the window. Like you're the teacher and you're writing things on the board. And for some reason, the fact that everybody's watching makes it all go awry. I will also speak to the other question we had, which was, what do you do if you kind of do a wrong color? Here's the pro tip. You're the only one who knows that. You're the only one who knows that you did, like say you're doing this pattern and you accidentally stitched this one little speckle like here. Nobody's going to know or care. Only you will know. Only you will care. So my advice is honestly, especially if it comes to like a more abstract pattern like this, where it's just supposed to be little speckles or polka dots, like there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not supposed to be anything specific. I would say just leave it, embrace it, work around it. It's no big deal. If your brain can't handle that, which I totally understand, if every time you look at this thing, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't even look at it. All I can see is the mistake. Then honor that about yourself. That's okay. I've been there. I get it. I would recommend using a seam ripper and just getting that one stitch, slicing through the two diagonals that make up the quote unquote wrong stitch. And then you can use your needle to sort of finesse from the front side. Once these are broken, you can sort of push all the fibers and kind of shove them through the holes to the back. And then you can stitch the correct color on top.
Here's another question. And my guess is the answer will just be practice. But as you are bringing your needle up from underneath, if you're not flipping it over to make sure that you're getting in the right spot and you're just having to poke around and kind of fish for the hole, are there any tips to finding the hole? Or is it really just a matter of poking a bunch of times and just learning how big the fabric is? Like any tips for finding those holes from the backside?
That the short answer is, yeah, just practice. It truly is, like, honestly, like any sport, golf, you learn to aim, anything like that. You'll pick it up over time. I will show you when I am coming through from the backside, I kind of hold, I wish I had like upside down cam. I'll just flip my fingers like this. I kind of press my finger up against the backside. It's right up against it. And I have my needle up against my finger as well. I usually hold my needle kind of tightly like this, where it's a tight hold. In fact, I hold it probably too tightly. Oftentimes my wrists are sore when I am done because the tendons in my wrists are activated. But I will also hold as I'm stitching, my finger against my fabric and kind of guide my needle like this. So I can sort of feel my work. And because I'm pressing, you can sort of see, do you see very subtly the shadow of my finger moving behind the fabric? You can see it move, the fabric itself is moving, but also the holes of the Aida fabric sort of give it away. So as I feel where I'm at, I can sort of, as opposed to holding it down here like this and just sort of jabbing, just poking like this, when I hold it securely and I don't have to squeeze as much as I do, and I hold my finger up against the backside of the fabric as I go, it helps me guide my needle a little better. I hope that helps. I hope that made sense. At the front, I pinch my needle like this, and then I finish the stitch like that. But when I'm on the backside, I tend to grip it a little more and guide with my finger, and that helps me get it like right in the general arena. And then it's just a matter of, getting your pokes a little more precise. As you can see, I'm in the arena here. I'm in the general area. I just need to bullseye it right where I want it to go. So I've done my first 3 rows. For the sake of time, I'm going to show you how to finish a thread and change your colors. I will probably gesture bigger than I am. So I'm going to zoom out ever so slightly. So if you were, if you had a short length of floss and you needed to finish and rethread, if you were done with a color, if you are just done with a section and you want to switch colors like we're going to do, what I like to do to finish is flip over to the back and take my needle and run it through some of the stitching on the back side. Just pull that needle right through, and that's how you secure the tail. I then will clip that tail nice and close. And I'm going to clean up my first one. Whip. And that is it. Now you're done. I recall that lavender was really hard to see. So I'm just going to quick pop out my colors here and get, this will be fun. I'll use this like bright yellow as my spot. So instead of light purple with dark spots, I'm going to use dark purple with yellow spots just to make it really pop for you. So when you're ready to use your next color, it starts just like before, where you get your second color of floss, split it to the same number of threads you were using before. In this case, for me, it's 3. You'll see, oh, look, I mentioned sometimes this bunches. I'm so glad all the problems have happened today so we can learn them in real time. This is what I meant by that Y shape. So I'm just sort of pulling now in all 3 directions because it just gets twisted. It's not a knot, it's just a tight twist. Pull that Y shape. Okay, so now I got my 3 threads and I'm going to thread my needle like this. Okay, so I'm just going to lick the end. I am who I am. And then I'm going to thread my needle. I find it just helps them stay in control and get right in there. Again, I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail, a couple of inches there, inch or 2. And then there are 2 things you can do. You can either like kind of pre-secure this floss so that it doesn't pull through just by running your needle a couple times through the backside of your existing floss, which will exist because this is about switching colors. You've already started one, we're doing another one. Or you can just do the same thing that we did at the beginning, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start at the bottom and do this first little speckle, and I will get my diagonals correct. Yeah, so Spencer's going to zoom us back in. So I'm bringing my needle up so that I can do the correct diagonal direction. And you can see I'm right next to the purple. I didn't bring my floss through the purple. Here's what that would look like. This is what I mean. It's when, especially when you switch colors, if you pull it through some of that existing floss, there we go. Then you can see that there's purple below, there's purple above, there's purple to the side, and it's not going to look equal in length because of that bunching that's kind of occurring. So I really like to make sure my needle is side by side to any existing floss in the holes of the Aida fabric. Sometimes I'll come through from the top and push my needle through and sort of open it up. If you're having a hard time not catching floss, catching flaky floss. Okay, now I'm going to hold the tail on the back side, complete a diagonal that is consistent with the others. I'm so glad you all said something. I want to notice because that's usually my groove is the opposite direction. And now I'm going to complete this cross stitch, but slowly on the back side. Again, I've got this loop happening. Got this loop happening, and I can catch the tail in the loop to secure that. We are not free, ladies and gentlemen, not free. And now I can complete this cross stitch. Now, the reason I wanted to do this particular pattern is you might notice on here on the pattern, I've completed this speckle. Well, now I could go way far right or way far left. What the heck am I going to do? Some people might want to, just for the sake of cleanliness on their fabric, tie this off and start again for each individual speckle. I think, I don't know, I'm not going to, that's an option. I'm just going to try and make a logical way around this. So I'm going to go to the left and then catch this one kind of in the middle. Then I'm going to go right, and then I can go above, and then I could keep going here, here, here. I mean, I could just try and make myself a little path that's as logical as possible. So I'm going to pop over to the left side here.
And why would you do that?
Just
individual dots.
As opposed to the individual dots, this is just to save myself time. So the reason somebody might not like this is once I scooch on over here without, clipping the floss and restarting, now I've got this line of floss here, but it's such a small area that this doesn't bother me. What you really want to avoid is say we've got a big night sky and you've got one cross stitch here and you've got one all the way over here. You might want to clip that off because you don't want a big strand of floss that's just like hanging out on the back, connecting your 2 individual cross stitches. In this case, they're close enough that it's not going to really get in the way. It's not going to cause problems. It's not going to bother me. So I'm just going to sort of ping pong around and do some of these funky yellow dots. Hey, look, another knot we get to take out together. So again, it's not really a knot. It's just a loop. I tend to start by putting my whoop, sorry, I tend to start by putting my needle through the loop just to see what's going to give. And already it's getting smaller. And then I can just sort of pop it out. No big deal. Breathe, breathe, breathe. We'll flip that over and complete our cross stitch here. One other thing I want to talk about is tension. You don't have to yank anything. Did I do that correct? Oh, my cross stitch down here, you guys, I did it wrong. I cannot believe I did it wrong. Unbelievable, Lizzie Bean, unbelievable. Well, look at guys. See, it's just the funny mistakes you make when you're on the spot. Gotta undo it. Gotta undo it. Make it consistent. I was so into telling you about how to not catch floss that's already in the 8 hole and you don't want to poke it through. You want to make sure it's smooth, come in from above and pave your own way, that I wasn't even paying attention to the direction when I specifically said, now I want to make sure I get this the right direction. Po buddies nerfect, I suppose. So I'll just finish up these stitches here to finish up these 3 rows. And as I do that, you can kind of watch me stitch more in real time as opposed to in an explainy way, stopping and going. But I just want to remind you in our last couple minutes that we'd love to see your work. So if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, post a picture, whether you are done or not, whether it's a work in progress or not. Just use the hashtag Make It With Michaels, the hashtag DMC, and the hashtag Stitch People, and we will track you down and give you a comment. I also want to surprise you all. We were going to give all of you watching this a discount today at stitchpeople.com. If you are interested in cross-stitch family portraits of any kind, those are the patterns that we specialize in the most. So if you want to go to stitchpeople.com, this is going to be good through the end of day today. That's it. So that's for all of you watching live, you special, wonderful, supportive, lovely people. All of you people watching live, or anybody watching, oh my gosh, I did this cross stitch wrong too. Anybody watching after the fact, you can, okay, sorry, you can just tell me to move it. Spencer starts like gesturing madly that I'm out of frame. So anybody watching live or anybody watching later today, you can use the code EGGS, I believe, right, Spencer?
Yep, eggs.
EGGS, eggs. Use the word eggs at discount to get it at checkout to get a 10% discount at stitchpeople.com. And that's just to say thank you for being here. And if Stitch People interest you, we want to lower that bar for you just a little bit and head out and see everything there. Also, give us a follow, stay in touch with us. We love making new friends, especially cross-stitchy friends. And I will finish this up and post a photo of it. Hopefully you'll do the same and you can kind of see what our funky purple and yellow egg turned out to be. But I just want to finish this last stitch so that we have 3 full rows in our how to cross stitch class. Hopefully these egg motifs aren't too overwhelming for you. Whether you did just 1 or 12, you're bound to have a sweet, springy Easter eggy treat. And I'm going to just switch back to my face so that I can thank you person to person, human to human. Thank you for being here. Thank you for learning how to cross stitch. I hope all the materials, pattern, making sense of a pattern, and the basic technique of cross stitching makes sense to you. Honestly, you've learned it. You know how to cross stitch now. That's the basics. You know how to start, how to tie off, how to restart, swap your colors, pull threads, fix knots, undo mistakes. We covered quite the gamut of information today. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and your participation. If anything else crops up, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, reach out to Stitch People on Instagram, email info@stitchpeople.com, and use the code EGGS for 10% off at stitchpeople.com through the end of day today. I believe midnight Mountain Time. So it'll be 11 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Central, and 2 a.m. Eastern through the end of today. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And as always, happy stitching. Ta-ta.